Hello, and welcome to the Illinois Drifter Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Kahn. Today, my guest is a musician named Eric Johanson, who I'll be honest with you, a few weeks ago, I would say about a month ago at this time, I had never heard of. I saw Danenberger Family Winery in New Berlin, Illinois, had advertised a show, Eric Johanson, blues rock guitarist, and I thought, oh, I don't know who that is. But then, they were persistent. Danenbergers was persistent. They put out some posts saying, hey, blues rock guitarist, great blues rock guitarist going to be here. And I started thinking to myself, I like blues rock. Why am I not going to this show? Then they advertised, some discounted tickets for it. I called my cousin, Matt, said, hey, what do you think? He said, yeah, let's do it. And I'm really glad I did. Really fantastic show. Love the venue too. We'll talk about that in the interview, but really impressed with Eric Johanson. When I saw the name, I also looked him up, and he had made an album with Luther Dickinson, who of course I'm a huge fan of. North Mississippi All Stars, love Luther and in pretty much any project he's ever done. So, that pretty much that was stamped. I said I'm going, and ended up connecting with him at the show. Really great guy. Bought some merch, took some pictures, and talked to him about coming on the podcast, and he agreed to. And I'm really happy to have him on today. I won't waste any more time. Let's go ahead and bring him on. Well, I want to welcome to the Illinois Drifter Podcast my guest, Eric Johanson. Eric, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, man. Glad to be here.
Well, we met at a pretty interesting venue in New Berlin, Illinois, which is right outside Springfield, central Illinois, where I'm located here in Decatur, Illinois, which is about an hour from New Berlin. Danenberger Family Vineyards is the name of the venue. That was the second time I'd been there, so I kind of knew what I was getting into. But I wanted to ask you, I want to know what your kind of reaction as you're pulling up, because I remember my first reaction was, "It's here at this house."
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it's not very often that we take like roads through farmland, in the middle of nowhere to pull up at a venue. That was pretty unique. And then you go in there and it's like it looks like a legitimate you know, club with balcony and everything. It was a pretty cool spot. But no, I definitely was first time for me, but pretty cool place.
And I know your band members. I kind of talked to one of those guys too, and they were pretty much. I'm sure their feelings were pretty similar. I mentioned as you guys are pulling up, I would love to know what that, in the
Yeah,
what
yeah.
that was
You
like.
kind of think, oh, are we going to the back of a farmhouse here with it? Are we going to be on the bed of a truck or something, you know? No, it was really cool.
Well, it's funny because that was the second time I'd been there. Like I said, the first time I was there was a couple years ago, and it was a Band of Heathen show, and it was outside, and it's cool outside too. They have all these like little kind of tucked away little coves, but it is more just like sort of a stage back there, and I mean, there is something that was a lot more kind of, I don't know, atmospheric about that indoor venue they had. That was a pretty cool place. I really like that indoor
Yeah.
venue better. Yeah. But hey, wanted to talk to you a little bit about your background, your kind of how you got where you are today. And I did looked into you a little bit, and I know you grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, but New Orleans as well. And you really grew up around a lot of music. You started playing very
Yeah.
young, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I had a lot of music going on in the family. My grandfather and grandmother ran a piano and organ store in Alexandria, Louisiana, which is where I spent the first part of my life. And so, I was crawling around underneath pianos, before ever playing. So a lot of the people on my mom's side of the family played in one way or another. And So I was kind of always around it, and then just thankfully had some able to kind of pick up things from people as I went along. But I always wanted to play the guitar. I don't really remember when that started. I just remember looking at them and being like, I need that. I need to do that. Um, so I started being able to join in and jam with other musicians, sometimes in the family, sometimes, bar and restaurant type situations where, a kid could be in there and, sit in on a song or something like that. Um, so yeah, and I kind of was really always doing that and as well doing studio stuff in one way or another because I always had a drum machine of some sort. Like, at first it was like a toy thing, and then it was like, I got this, you know, old like Alesis drum machine from a guy that, wasn't using it anymore, but I was always like sequencing drums and like trying to record things into to make like little demos and stuff, I guess. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking I was doing, but it was just kind of creation. Um, and then I started interning, I guess you would call it that. I didn't know that's what you called it at the time, but when I was like 11, I think I called up the local recording studio up there in Alexandria and like asked if I could like help out, and surprisingly, inexplicably, the answer was yes. Um, and so I started being around like hip hop sessions and stuff like that too, which is something that I realize I haven't actually talked about a lot. But all of that stuff really fed into the things that I do. Um, so, one half of it was jamming with people, and the other half of it was experimenting and making beats and writing a riff over it. And so both of those things, I think, started out pretty early for me and became part of what I do.
You have introducing that now as well, the hip hop, but you do have a pretty wide range of musical interests and things you've kind of done. I know you're definitely more known for the blues, blues work, but
Yeah.
I know you kind of metal. You're into metal, and you've definitely been around the block as far as the genres go.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I was always into stuff that I would say is more melodic or but for me there's a um the range of expression, and I I definitely I would say like my first things that really got me really excited, we're seeing like arena rock bands and stuff. That was just like, oh, I have to do this. And of course, that compared to my exposure to blues at the time, which would have typically been in a more low-key setting, in a more, less exciting setting, maybe, obviously that I think that caught my interest, and then as I started to get a feel for the music and playing it, then that's when I started to feel the blues on a deeper level and sort of understand it more, and understand it as the root of all of the other stuff that I was also into. So, both of those things have kind of gone back and forth. I went really into blues for a while, as a teen, and then when I started trying to write my own songs and find my own voice in it, uh, I felt a little bit out of place, I guess, and that's kind of led me back into rock music and experimenting in that direction, having, a band in that direction for a little while, and but ultimately, what I really just love is the in the moment improvisation and the the feeling that you get to get out uh, when you play music that isn't so defined. When there's a lot of room to, you know, to blur outside the edges or to create in that moment that you're there with the audience. That really started to, over time, uh, become the thing that I was chasing and most interested in doing. So I think what I do now is probably it's got elements of the heavier stuff in it, but it's never gonna be like, oh, we're playing the song just like it was on the record.
Right. I want to set a time frame for you here. Um, 2005, Hurricane. That was, of course, the year Hurricane Katrina hit. What were you? Where were you in your life when all that happened? Where were you as a musician? Where were you? Where were you as a person?
Uh, well, I at that time, um, I was sort of working on rock band stuff and also experimenting with a kind of more down tempo electronic project. Really still just figuring out what I wanted to do. Um, and when that hit and I lost all the gear that I had at that time and just sort of really got completely untethered from any attachments, um, I found myself leaning more into just wanting to explore life or and I felt at that time like music could be just more of maybe a writing thing or a recording, a little bit more intimate stuff or uh, I just wasn't as live focused at the time and to be honest, I have had some regrets about that over, it's I definitely had to later in life pick up from where I might have started if I had, just been going out there playing clubs and whatever at that time. But I think I just felt this calling to um, just get out and I just wasn't career focused, to be honest. I
Yeah.
was still very artistic at the time, but I just really wasn't. I thought that I might just come up with that, like record things and kind of put them out. Um, and then I, ended up going to New Zealand for, a little while, and just really on a process of discovery.
That, that's a pretty big move. New Zealand. I guess, how did that kind of come about that you decided, that
Oh,
was
I
the
think it was a
spot?
combination of feeling the itch to get out somewhere else and also just being completely untethered by losing everything. So, and it wasn't like I was in some like financially privileged position or anything. I just literally had to go sleep on a couch and like work a regular job and you know, go, what's next, because I didn't really have anything to come back to in New Orleans at that time. So, uh, you know, basically, that just kind of became a goal. That kind of became let me see if I can do this. Let me see if I can go. This place sounds amazing. Let me see, and it is amazing. Still have a lot of love for it. It's just, you know, so yeah. That I mean, I just kind of set my sights on accomplishing that, and that kind of became a thing to keep me moving forward. I think just personally. Um, and and eventually it was the music and the live music and the improvisational music that I had somewhat taken for granted in Louisiana and New Orleans specifically. Um, it's sometimes you really don't see what is special or what you're taking for granted until it's not there anymore. And you know, no matter what I was ever doing, there were always situations where I would get with other musicians and we would just make stuff up on the spot and be jamming, and it was good. It was like listenable. And there's so much of that that had been in my life, and that's so much a part of the culture here. And I'm sure it's not only here, but between the funk and the jazz and the blues and all that stuff, and even the Zydeco and everything, stuff that at various times was not my main focus, but you'd find yourself in those situations, and you just, even, you'd be jamming with somebody that also had like this guy has a metal band, but he's playing a blues thing on the bass right now, and you're jamming with him, and or this person is like way older than you, and it just you have these situations, and you just kind of take it for granted that like Christmas party, people pick up instruments, and all of a sudden we're jamming on some blues stuff, and that rich kind of tradition of improvisation and listening and everything that we definitely have here. I'm not saying we're the only place, but it's a big thing here. And I did kind of take that for granted a little bit because I just thought it was like, I don't know, just life on planet Earth. I just thought that's kind of how it was everywhere. And so I really started to see, man, I've really got something special, in New Orleans with the connection that I have to that musical culture, even though I'm not a brass band or, I'm not jazz or whatever. But you start to go, I am a little bit more a part of that than I realize. Like there's a lot more of that New Orleans thing in what I take to be music and how you express yourself through music. It's actually a lot more of who I am than I saw before I left, um, which kind of brought me back.
So in New Zealand, did you know people there? Did you have friends, or was it a pretty isolated situation for you?
I made friends online, before, and so I knew a couple of people when I went over there, but no, for the most part, it wasn't like I had family over there or anything like that. It was just totally I want to do this
And there were
thing.
there definitely weren't people to jam with, or where did you find people?
Well, no, I mean, I did find some people, and again, there are some great musicians over there, but they don't have, treading lightly here because I don't want to speak of, there's always maybe I don't know this or that pocket of scene over there, but I did not find um, a context or a real culture of that. So I did run into some musicians, and I remember one guy I was jamming with. He had like a Stanton Moore DVD and stuff, from Stanton is a great New Orleans drummer, from Galactic and everything. And so it was like in a way, it was like I did connect with some people that were into some of the same stuff, but it was very much like a niche thing over there. You know, there was a lot of DJ scene going on, to be honest. And I can dig some part of pretty much everything, but that was definitely not something that I saw myself in, you know. So, it was kind of like trying to find, well, um, I was somewhat making music that was half electronic as well at the time, which is an interest that I've had, but it's also was adaptive to the situation, I think. And then also, I found some people to jam with, um, but I think it was a little bit hard to. I mean, you just can't replicate the culture that we have down here.
And so that kind of is what brought you back.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So you come back and what I guess you kind of establish yourself and kind of and you start working as a session musician, correct? Is that kind of what the
I
path
mean,
was?
more like a live hired gun type thing. And I say hired gun, it's not like this wasn't like your people talk to my people. I mean, this is very much like you're hanging out on the street, you're in the club, you're sitting in. The next thing you know, they're like, "Oh, so and so can't make it on Friday," and just really organic. And you know, I just it's hard when I look back. I'm not really sure why I didn't just immediately start trying to book my trio thing just like I'm doing it now because I had certainly done that here and there before, and but I just really, it's almost like I became like a student of the music again a little bit. I wasn't necessarily thinking of it that way, but I just very much enjoyed playing in these different types of things, with a brass band or with, a funk legend or something, and I, and I was also partying a lot. So there was a lot of just like, you just like, I just dove right into, I'm back in New Orleans and I'm out every single night until the wee hours of the morning. And like, I'm jamming with people and I'm playing, it was a little bit of a lifestyle, um, for me for a while. But a lot of good came from it. And I do feel like I soaked up a lot of different stuff that's worked its way in the music now.
How did you decide then to go ahead and put the trio together?
I think I was feeling that pull for a while, and honestly, it there's no good reason why sometimes there's these things that you kind of kick around and you talk about and you don't really accomplish for a while. But I'd say that I kind of I knew that I wanted to move in that direction. And I think I was sort of feeling that sense of, well, I could just go record some, you know, uh, record or something, but you know, why and when and and so when I started having the idea that, I'd really like to like work with somebody on this. I'd like to come out of the gate with something that where I'm working with somebody that I really look up to. And I had been connecting with Tab Benoit quite a bit, just kind of hanging out with him at his shows, and he'd have me up and sit in and stuff like that. And so started talking about the idea of doing a record together with him producing it, and him playing drums on it because we had had several jams where he's playing drums and stuff. And yeah, so when we finally got past the talking about it stage and nailing down some dates to go in the studio, that kind of became all right, this is a good way to kind of kick this era off, of doing fronting my own trio and everything. Let's make this record with Tab, and then I went out for a couple years, uh, pretty much opening most of his shows and stuff.
How
So
did you how did you meet Tab originally? How did you kind of connect with him in the first
It's
place?
one of those things. It's one of those very New Orleans things. I mean, he's from Houma, but that's like an hour away. But it's one of those very New Orleans type things where there was many overlapping connections. So I had a great friend of mine who um, was actually at one time a drummer in my rock band, who was now drumming for Tab. And at the same time, I was playing with Cyril Neville, whose manager at the time was managing Tab. And then I was hanging out in New Orleans, and I was hanging, one of my good friends became Tab's tour manager. And I mean, it's just kind of one of those things. I had heard of Tab earlier, when I mean, it's not like I had been aware of him, but I hadn't really like seen a show and like gotten to know what he did until kind of coming back
Right.
to the States and coming back to New Orleans. And yeah, so it's just kind of organic, just hanging out and staying up too late and and talking music and everything.
So you guys get, you get into a studio and you make Burn It Down. That was about what, 2016 or so?
2017, it came out
2017?
into, oh yeah, like late 2017. Yeah.
That was, so 2017 is when you made it. What was that experience? What was that experience like? Was that your first, I guess, experience making a record?
No, it definitely wasn't. But I don't necessarily point people to every earlier thing I ever did. But no, I mean, again, I had been in the studio as a fly on the wall for felt like my whole life, and then I had recorded myself. I'd made some like bedroom rock records, where I was recording it, I was mixing it, I was doing the whole thing like earlier in life. Um, that was, I would say, the first time that I'd like worked with somebody that I looked up to, you know, because everything else I had previously done was very like just my own kind of DIY situation. And so that was the first time, that there was another voice in the room that I respected, and that was cool just to get um, you know, that feeling of like, okay, well, he's digging this, so that means we're on to something. Um, so yeah, I mean, but it was the first time I put out a record under my own name, which uh, you know, I still sometimes think maybe I should have thought of something that wasn't so easily misspelled or whatever, but it is my name, so but so that started this trajectory.
Sure. And then you kind of mentioned earlier, you guys kind of did some touring together. Was it mostly like you opening for Tab? Is that kind of what it was? Or
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And it was me opening the shows, and he played drums for me when I opened up, and his bass player Corey played bass um, for me. which was just a way of traveling light. I mean, there was only one
Mhm.
extra bunk on the bus, so it was like, you know, that was the way of making it work. But
It's also fun
um,
though. It's also kind of a fun thing. If I was buying a ticket to a show, a Tab Benoit show, and he came out playing drums, and and you
yeah.
were up there, that's pretty cool.
It was very cool. I mean, honestly, and it was his idea, because at first it was kind of like, well, how can I logistically go out with them on all these dates and stuff? And I guess am I going to have to play solo? I can enjoy playing solo, but it's always, the power trio thing is really what I like to do, and it's very hard, I think, to represent that sometimes solo, stomping your foot on the
Yeah,
ground,
yeah.
playing acoustic guitar or something. So like, but that was his suggestion. He's like, well, I mean, I played drums on the record. I might as well play it when you open. And I think there was some pushback at first, or like, some people in his circle that were like, I don't know if it makes sense for you to come out and open for yourself. But everybody was into it. It was always I don't think, you know, once we got it going, it was everybody was into it, and he ended up doing that for some other artists as well later. So it got the ball rolling on that, whole thing. But yeah, I mean it was a great time. I definitely I took a lot from watching his trio every night as well.
The next album you made was an album called Blues in My Blood, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the person you made the album with is family of yours, correct?
Yeah. My cousin Tiffany Pollock.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
a cool album.
oh, thanks. It was kind of one of those things where she was working with this label, Nola Blue, or talking with them about doing something, and they had this idea of like, well, what if you do a duet thing? And we didn't really know what, we would do with something like that. I mean, it wasn't like, okay, this is the new, we're gonna take this thing on the road and whatever, but there was interest in doing the record, and it was kind of like, well, why not? It's fun. Let's go make a record. And So yeah, I mean, I think it's about like half her singing, half me, and some, couple of duetish type things in there, but it was fun. I mean, it definitely it's funny because that record, I have had a lot of people bring it up to me, like even overseas and stuff, and it definitely had really no push in terms of like we weren't out there doing dates on it and stuff like that. She's got her own thing and I do my own thing and everything, but it was a good it was a cool thing to do.
No question, no doubt. And I'm sure like your family, I mean, was it like as far as like your family, were they kind of was it kind of a special thing for them? Like
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, not to tell too much of her story, but um I mean, she's told it's in the record, but she I didn't grow up knowing Tiffany. Um and it was kind of like we found each other later in life. Um, and so yeah, I think it was a cool thing because when I discovered that she was also a musician playing in New Orleans, that was pretty wild because she's my first cousin.
Yeah.
And we just didn't grow up knowing each other. So, it was sort of really like that power of nature versus nurture thing. I mean, there's a certain thing where you're just like, wow, you're also singing blues in New Orleans. Um, so, I felt like it had to be done, at a certain point.
Yeah, very cool. Well, if there's one thing that we love on the Illinois Drifter podcast, it's Luther Dickinson. He
Yeah, man.
would love Luther, and I would love to know how you connected with the Dickinsons.
Well, definitely first started just as a fan and listening. I just love those guys. I mean, you know, Luther has this beautiful style that just tone and melody and just something that to me is pretty unique in preserving tradition while also being psychedelic and being, you know, uh, just kind of dangerous at times, but also like traditional in a way that is just not. I don't see that a lot, and I just you know I just have been a huge fan of his sound and everything. And obviously, the Cody's drumming and the way that those guys jam together, especially like the early the live record they put out in like '07 or something like that, the way we used to do or something like that it's called. But anyway, but yeah, I was definitely a fan of theirs and then started, ran into Luther a couple times at like late night jazz fest jam things. We finally we played together on this Hendrix tribute jam thing during Jazz Fest in New Orleans. And he threw it out there. He's like, "Oh man, we should make a record, just whatever." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do that." So exchange contact info and hit him up and we started, trying to find a time to do it and ended up doing it at Luther and Cody's place that was their dad, Jim Dickinson's place, the Zebra Ranch up in North Mississippi. It was just like a barn out in the country. Um, and it was great, cut a record that was the below sea level record. Cody played drums on it. Luther was producing and Terrence Grayson on bass from Victor Wainwright's band and Southern Hospitality he's in as well. But yeah, man. Just love those guys and still keep up with Luther, and always love seeing him.
No doubt. That album's a pretty cool album, and it has like some definitely some New Orleans themes. I mean, Below Sea Level is that's
Yeah.
yeah. So I thought that was a nice nod to New Orleans for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's definitely like I found out, I mean, I'm obviously having some fun with it, but at the same time, it's like I was kind of surprised nobody had used that title for an album, at least not that I could find. Not that that would keep me necessarily from using it because you can't always, I mean, there's so many records out there and whatever, um, yeah, I mean, you know, literally a lot of the cities below sea level, and which was, apparent and has been apparent at different times when we've had flooding, uh, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of New Orleans themes in there. I suppose there are in a lot of what I do just because it's the context of where I'm creating and where I'm being inspired. Um, but yeah, that record was fun. I mean, we cut it in like 3 days. Which I suppose I haven't really spent very much longer than that on any record, um, but yeah, it was a good time.
So I know next was the covered tracks albums, which I'm guessing are a COVID project, correct? Is that kind of what that was?
Yeah,
Yeah, which
yeah.
which is a good idea, right? I mean, you're doing COVID. There's nothing else to do, and those album that stuff seems pretty well received. I know you had posted the other day about one of the tracks on YouTube had a ton of, or maybe it was Spotify, whatever, had a ton of listens to.
Spotify, yeah. The Death Letter cover, for whatever reason, just seems to be continuously played on Spotify, but there's a lot of the covers that people have um, brought up to me, and it's so crazy. You never would think that you would introduce people to a song that in your mind it's just like, well, everybody knows that song. Like there's no, like but it's always going to happen because there's always going to be somebody that for whatever reason, whatever their listening habits are, they never came across this song, And so that's a crazy thing to like be the first time somebody hears one of these songs, but it has happened and but yeah, I mean, I basically, I started live streaming a bunch during COVID, which was really not I didn't think I wanted to do that at first because again, it goes back to that whole solo acoustic guitar guy when that's not what I'm really trying to do. But you know, there's a point where it was like, well, this is what I can do. And I definitely grew to love it more. And the connection that I had with people, which I kind of miss. It's just hard to get off the road and like set up all that stuff and get back in that mode of like live streaming. You know, you have other things going on, but I really um, did value the connection that I had with people jumping on the live stream and taking requests and whatever. And so uh, people started saying, "Hey, it would be cool if you recorded something like this, just basically doing a little guitar looping and stomping your foot and you know just this stripped down thing. It would be cool if you recorded that." And I thought about it, and it was also something that felt like I could follow up right after putting out an original record. You know, you don't nobody really wants you to put out another um, original record immediately. I mean, the fans might, but people who've invested in the record don't want you to do that. But but putting out some cover songs was a cool way of just kind of having something else to work on, and so I had a lot of fun doing those, and um, yeah, I did Yellow Moon by the Neville Brothers, which, again, it sounds nothing like Aaron Neville, but there's some people that like that version of it, and so it's cool, just it's been definitely um, something that's brought some people in to the thing where they've heard an acoustic track and then they've gotten into the other stuff. So, you know, whatever finds your way,
Exactly. It's interesting. It kind of just got me thinking about this a little bit when you were talking about, during COVID, that there was that time that, really, and obviously COVID was a horrible thing. And I'm not trying to say that there was any positives from it, but for independent musicians, there was that sort of minute there during COVID where there was that connection that I think a lot of bands made or a lot of acts made connections to fans during that time. I wonder if maybe that is a something that maybe independent acts should look at doing more now post COVID is that kind of stuff, because it did seem like there was a moment there where a lot of people kind of made fan bases during that time, almost were able to build, at least a part of a fan base or whatever during
Right.
that time with that, like you said, that personal connection people were getting through doing those like live stream type things.
Yeah. I think just to be fully transparent, I think one of the challenges, once you're back out there touring is you're constantly um, telling people what they're going to see when they come to the show, and you almost don't want to confuse with having this constant stream of you sitting in your living room with an acoustic guitar because you're trying to sell, tickets to these shows that are the band. And so there's a little bit of a thing where that was definitely a time where, well, look, we're all at home, and so this makes sense. I still feel like there's probably a way it can make sense, and maybe uh because it is something special. And I think more and more, you know, it's really about that direct connection that you have with fans anyway. Um, so whatever you can do to stay connected, um, I think is an important thing. There've been people all over the world that have come up to me and said that they came into what I'm doing through watching the live streams of me in my living room with an acoustic guitar. Um, so, I definitely think that it makes a real connection um, that is a little different than just hearing a song.
I want to talk a little bit more about that, but I do want to first get to your latest, or it's not your latest album, but it's the latest, I guess, original material studio album that you did,
Yeah.
which was The Deep and the Dirty, which I think honestly is my favorite of your work. I think it, for whatever reason, it just kind of feels. after I saw you live, I could kind of whatever reason it just made me it feels most like you, like who maybe who
Yeah.
you are as a musician. And I do hear a little bit of that metal influence in there at times. You know, we're just like just some of the I don't know. I'm not sure how to describe it, but I sort of hear it in some of those songs.
Yeah. Well, and I thank you. I would agree. I think it's my favorite too. I mean, I like some of the stuff on the other ones as well, but I mean, I think that you're always trying to kind of become what it is that you're trying to do, and I definitely think that that one was a big step in that direction for me. Just naturally allowing all these things that I'm into to kind of come together. Um, you know, yeah, there's some heavy bits. I always am like, hope people don't get the wrong idea with that because my idea of heavy is an extension of the expression, just like when you uh, express, your emotions through the blues. Um, you know, Digging in a little bit more in certain parts and hitting the drums a little harder and everything, that to me is an expression of the emotion. And so to me, it's just like um, you know, a higher point on the wave. It's not we're not just going like it's not just like
Right. Yeah.
this there's nothing processed or um you know um meticulous about it. It's just that natural place that for me um you know the the expression goes. So you know I think there there certainly is stuff that sounds like there's stuff out there that to me sounds like um 80s hair band playing a blues song. That's not what we do. Um, I would say, but there's a continuum for me from some of the 90s rock stuff to stuff like Government Mule and some of, Anders Osborne's heavier stuff, and even some of the stuff like North Mississippi where they've got the low tuned guitars and all that. Like to me, these things are really on a continuum. And we find ourselves somewhere along that continuum where there's these elements where sometimes it's kind of deep and low and spooky a little bit, but always coming from that human expression and that organic feeling of playing it live and not fixing everything and not processing everything. Um, so yeah, I definitely feel like that record represents a direction that I continue to try to go in terms of just letting all those things come out in an organic way and however they come into the music.
Right. I want to do a show the if you're watching on YouTube, here we are. Here's the album here, and you'll notice that it's signed here. And I wanted you mentioned earlier you got to kind of do it one fan at a time. And one of the things that really impressed me about you that night is after the show, you sit out there, pose for pictures, sign anything anybody bought from the merch, which you had a you had a nice supply of merch too for an independent musician. I know that's tough sometimes, and really just you're out there doing it, and I just want to say respect to that, and that's how you have to do it more than ever, right? I mean that's it's almost old fashioned, but that's really the only way to do it at this point.
Yeah, yeah, I think, really, I mean, these days there's so much competing for people's attention that, if people take the time to come to a show and get into the music and they want to talk about it or whatever, man, I'm so there for it, because I you know, uh, I mean that's one of the best parts of doing this is meeting all different people everywhere. Um and so yeah, I always do that. And yeah, I mean it's cool to hear everybody's stories and just make those connections with people. I don't think everybody realizes how much this is a word of mouth type of thing. Um, you know, I think sometimes, well, it's sort of you think other people know about the things that you're into, but like a lot of the times they don't. And if you introduce a friend, all the time we're like, oh, my buddy played me this or whatever. That is so much how it works.
Yeah.
It's almost totally how it works. And so, I always appreciate that too when people come and they're like, yeah, my friend dragged me out to this, but like, man, and then they're getting a record or something like that. Because that is, so just to give a huge amount of thanks to everybody that spreads the word like that, because that's really what it is. This is not MTV stuff. This is not top 40 radio stuff. This is you putting it on for your buddies when you're having a barbecue or something, or
Hmm.
just sitting there, chilling with a friend and putting on some records. Like this is that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, man, I mean, the people that keep this stuff alive are, they're the whole reason that it exists.
I heard one of the people talking to you and saying that they thought you were older. Do you get that a lot? I mean, because you're definitely not an old. I think that maybe people think, oh, blues, rock musician is going to be somebody older. Do you get that a lot, or no?
I don't know. I mean, it's it's uh it's an interesting thing. I actually think that he said, I thought you looked older on stage and than you do up close, and I was like, well, damn it, what were they doing with the lights? Um, no, I don't know, man. I mean, it's kind of a funny thing because I have been doing music most of my life, and I think that issue of time and where you're at in things, I've sort of, in some ways, um, you know, been ambiguous about stuff just because I have had that conversation around that stuff since I was like, barely able to hold the guitar. And then at a certain point I just was kind of I remember when I was playing when I was really young, I just got so you do whatever you can to sell things, and I understand that, but like I used to be so allergic to it that like people would go, "Oh, he's only 14 and he's playing, come see him play." And I just was like, I'm either good or I'm not. Like, I don't want to be good for 14. I don't want to be good for 78. I want to be, you know what I'm saying? It's either good or not. And I get it, but you do kind of have this thing on either end of the spectrum where it's like, you go see somebody who's 13 and you're like, he's so good for 13. And then you go see somebody at 88 and you're like, he sounds so good for 88. And it's just, I guess I get it, and but I guess there's always been this part of me where it's just like, man, the art needs to be, how do you really feel about it? You know,
Yeah.
not how do you feel about it with this extra information, but how do you really feel about it?
No, you're right. You're totally right about that. And now, and I'm not going to ask you your age, but I am going to ask you for some extra information about your.
No, sure, yeah, yeah.
But I'm joking with you. So you have the three piece and really excellent band. I enjoyed your rhythm section, bass and drummer. If you don't mind, what are those guys' names, and also how did you kind of connect with those two?
Well, yeah, so New Orleans has a lot of great musicians, and I've jammed with different people, and there've been different people in this trio at different times. Will Repholtz on the bass has been with me the longest. Um, he started playing with me, I think, in 2018. Um, and So he was on bass that night and is usually. And we had Darren Smith on drums uh, there at that show. He is a young cat from Houma, Louisiana, and just great, insane musician. But he and there's another guy, Jake Gartenstein, who has been doing most of the drumming on the last year or so of touring, last couple of years of touring. Um, but as these things are, sometimes you get dates that come in and somebody's got a conflict or something like that. So I've had a couple of drummers on different tours, and everybody brings their own thing to it, um, and that's always fun. But um, but yeah, those guys, you know, it's always cool to just find people that you can really connect with and create in the moment with.
The young man, I'm sorry, I know you just said his name. The young man that was on drums the night in New Berlin there, he was saying something about maybe his older brother had used to drum for you or had also.
Yeah. Well, I not biological brother, but like basically family, like Terry Scott Jr., who is on the Live in Mississippi record. And he joined in with me about 2018 as well, I guess around the same time that Will started playing with me. Great guy. And he did most of my shows until he started touring with Mark Broussard. Um, a couple years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And then I kind of started working in different people in the mix, and Terry kept coming in and doing stuff. But you know, Terry's just great. He played with Dr. John for a little while, and then like I said, he's been out with Mark Broussard. But it's so interesting with improvisational stuff like this because the songs kind of evolve. So sometimes it's um, when somebody comes back in, it's like you realize, oh yeah, that thing changed. Like now we do this or whatever. So it's always a little bit of you know, it, things change a little bit, depending on who's in the lineup. But it keeps it fresh and interesting as well. So
That's fun. Now, I have a lot of respect, first of all, that you've went through the struggle of getting sober. I know it's a tough thing when someone is, I definitely have had a lot of family and been through it myself through the years, a lot of substances, things like that. So I want to say a lot of respect for getting sober and also, for sharing your story because I know that's hard and it's not for everyone. And I know I respect people who don't want to talk about it and share it, but I really do think it helps people who have been through it to know that there's something on the other side. So, I guess just wanted to say, thank you for doing that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think everybody's got their own uh view of these things. I always want to like make it clear to people that, this is what was best for me and it
Yeah,
has nothing to do with me enjoying playing for people that are partying and having a good time and whatever. I also, for me, um, you know, I don't really follow any particular groups or anything like that. Like I'm not, it for me it was really just like it's time to cut out alcohol. Um, you know, I do think different things are different. Some people feel like everything is the same. I'm not really of the mindset, whether you call that California sober, whatever. I personally, most of the time, I'm just drinking coffee. But I do think that everything is kind of different. At least when you're talking about the things that aren't deadly and harmful. And I still am, you know open-minded toward certain things that I mean I'm open-minded toward other people doing whatever, but for me personally, like it was really the alcohol that was the thing where
yeah,
I was just like this has gotta go. um and yeah, it's something, and that's the one that is being served at the places that you play and the places that you see music. So I think that's definitely the one that um I feel is important to tell people, hey, you can do this without that, you know, because it's kind of something that when you're in that state, um, you just look around and you go, this is everywhere. Like, how do you do any of this stuff without this? And then once you stop, you realize, no, there's people all over the place we're in the same space, we're enjoying the same thing, but you don't you definitely can do it without that. And perhaps if you're a person like me, even easier. It's even better to, because you actually enjoy things more.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's always different things work for different people. Um, and you know, I, like I said, personally, have my own path with it, which is, basically just enjoying all the things I was maybe missing out on, rather than dwelling too much on the dark times. I'm sort of just like making up for lost time or something, just like
Yeah.
sucking it all in. But yeah, thanks, man. Rambling on there, but
You're
yeah,
totally fine. And I think I think when we talk about drugs and alcohol, I think one thing to always remember is that everything affects everyone differently. I mean, I know
yeah,
people who can drink and they're they're mostly fine. I mean, they might get if they drink too much, they might get hungover or whatever. But I know people who drink and their personalities completely change, and it's ugly. And I know people who are kind of in between. You know what I'm saying? Where it's maybe there's a level, maybe their mood going into it or whatever affected things. And I know people who can, use cannabis and are fine. And I know people who use cannabis and freak out and get sick,
yeah,
things like that. So I mean, I think that
yeah,
when you're dealing with those things, I think that, there's everybody, you kind of have to learn yourself a little bit with that stuff. And, not, and certainly not everything's for everybody. So I think that that's one of those
right.
things where, we all have to sort of learn those as we go along, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do think there's a disproportionate number of musicians probably that have either taken things too far or have cut it out. And I think a lot of it is like I think it must have something to do with the same thing that makes you want to crank up the music and makes you want to just I just want to, I want to go on the roller coasters. I want to go, I want to turn the guitar up. I want to drive fast. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
there's a thing where it's like, as much as I always thought, oh, it would be nice to be that guy that's just like sipping a little cognac or something and whatever. But it's like, nah, man, it's like I kind of go full throttle with everything. I drink too much damn coffee, you know what I mean? So it's kind of just like there's certain things where you got to watch out for that type of personality with certain things and just go like, all right, yeah, that one is gonna, I'm gonna put the pedal to the metal every time. So, you know,
Yeah, no question about that. I definitely, my dad was that personality, and he used to talk about the Dire Straits songs, "Heavy Fuel." If you want to run
yeah,
cool, you got to run in heavy fuel. That was always he always said that was his theme song. So,
yeah,
because he was a big coffee drinker as well. Well, hey, we didn't talk about one thing. The one project we didn't talk about was your latest one, which is the live album, which is great, and I really highly recommend. I mean, it's just a really, I mean, I think it's nice to have that out there, just kind of saying, hey, you want a taste of the live show? This is kind of what it's about.
yeah. I mean, I really like live recordings, especially of this type of thing, because I mean, um, this is really an organic, it's a live art form. And I'd probably put out more live stuff if maybe at some point we'll get on Nugs or something like that and put out all the shows. But for now, I kind of wanted to put out um an updated live thing. We did one, before the new record came out, and I wanted to do another one with some of the new songs on it, and do one that came out on vinyl, which is something that people had expressed interest in. Um, and yeah, I mean, I I'm glad that people are digging it. I'm sure we'll do more in the future as well, just because. You know, I mean there's things that happen live that like I don't even know we're gonna do, it's just it's that's the part of the magic of it. And that's just want to capture that and let people dig into that at home too.
No doubt. Now, what's on the horizon for you?
Well, I've been working on music a lot. the touring and everything over the last couple of years kept me pretty busy. Um, and even when you see a gap in there, usually there's something that you're working on the next thing coming up. And so I've been working on music a little bit more because we definitely want to do another record this year. We've already started on that. Um, we've got a few dates. So we got a couple of dates in Texas next month, and heading up kind of toward the East Coast in May. With you have some dates that we're about to announce there, and then further up the East Coast in June, and just getting out there over the summer. Going to go back to Europe later in the year, but sort of been, doing a little bit more of the writing and recording stuff because it's been a little too long on that. Life just kind of gets in the way. But we've been working on we've had some studio sessions and are going back in. So excited about, doing some new stuff that I think keeps moving further in that direction of kind of really charting out our own lane.
And you think you'll put out an album? I know that's sort of, the industry is sort of like almost putting that down a little bit, right? People just want the singles or whatever. But are you thinking an album you'll do, or what is the?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess who knows what anything is at this point. I just know that I like records, and you know, it's like I certainly can see releasing singles, and we will, um, leading up to and in between. But um, but to me, I mean, the I guess I just grew up on records, so it's still, it's still that idea of wanting something that people can, drop the needle on and like put, listen, um, and have it take them somewhere, or riding in the car or whatever, just um, and I tend to be like a deep cut guy for whatever reason. I think it's something that I've had to realize. It's like, wow, my sense of what I like must be a little different than a lot of people because, I always would find the song on the record that was like number 8 or something that I would be like, that's the one, and it would never be the one that was like the hit. And which maybe is, as a songwriter is a funny thing because it's weird if the thing that pleases you the most is the thing that's like the least likely to be the hit or something like that. But uh but I like that idea that you can be more three-dimensional. That's the thing that I feel like is lost in an era where maybe the deep cut doesn't have a place as much if you're just thinking like, okay, well, we want this track to be, successful, and then we got to release another one that's successful and everything. And I mean, I could get into a whole thing about just that, but I think a record that takes you places, that's still like what I aspire to do. Um, Rather than, just something that's catchy,
Yeah.
a song that's catchy.
Hey, Eric, I really appreciate you taking your time out today and coming on the show with me. It was a lot. This conversation was a lot of fun, and I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
man, fun for me too, man. It's really good talking to you.
Definitely. Thank you for listening to the Illinois Drifter podcast. Be sure to visit and subscribe to Illinois Drifter on YouTube at youtube.com/at Illinois Drifter. And for past podcast episodes, show reviews, and other goodies, go to illinoisdrifter.substack.com. There's much more to come on the Illinois Drifter podcast. I'll see you at a show. Come back and start again. Where I've always been. Break apart in two. Come back just like new.
side.